Welcome to Masterclass in Biology. So we are looking at another chapter in most valuable question series of ours. I call them as MVQs. And let us again understand what we are actually trying to achieve. This is our very final preparation just before, or revision I should say, before the actual NEET entrance examination. And I have limited myself to the text matter that is given in your NCERT textbook as much as possible. And the idea is to understand what are the possible questions that can be asked in the NEET entrance exam. So we will be limiting ourselves only and only to the NCERT as much as possible, and we will try to see what are the questions that are likely to be asked from this subject matter. This should be now absolutely clear. We should be absolutely clear about the purpose that we are trying to serve with this particular series, which means that I take it for granted that you have gone through your NCERT textbook. You have attempted, say for example, the understanding NCERT section in your masterclass in biology or any other question bank or test series that you are following, and now you want a very quick revision just before the entrance examination, where as an experienced teacher I am trying to put my mind to your service, I would say, like that. So now we will be looking at this chapter, which is locomotion and movement. This is Human Physiology Unit 5, Class 11th NCERT. This is the part 1 of the video, where I will be discussing the first part, which is the skeletal muscle. So one question is expected every year from this portion, the skeletal muscle portion of this chapter in your NEET entrance examination. So straight away, let us look at what are the possible questions. So when you start reading your NCERT, the first thing is that it has given you a little bit of evolutionary perspective. How? First and foremost, the thing is that you must be able to differentiate what is the difference between a locomotion and movement. And please remember that this is very important to understand that not all movements will be locomotion. So locomotion will include the change in location or place. This is something, point number 1, that must be absolutely clear. The second thing would be that if you look at the evolution of the complexity of the locomotion, so you look at the amoeboid movement, and incidentally try to remember that amoeboid movement are also facilitated or helped by the cytoskeleton elements, and especially the microfilaments, which are made up of the actin protein. So this is an important point to understand. Amoeboid movement, then you look at cilia, flagella, and then the muscle. And especially we will be talking about the skeletal muscle. Now, if you look at the human body, you can see the legacy of the evolution. Your WBCs, the neutrophils, the monocytes, etc., they are capable of showing what are called as amoeboid movement. So that movement is present in the human body as well. Look at the ciliated epithelium. So the lining of the fallopian tube pushing the ovum towards the ampulla of the fallopian tube, which is the most common site of fertilization, that would be the ciliary movement. So I am not going into the details of the tissues, etc. I have done the location of the ciliated epithelium in the human body in a separate video, but you can understand what we are arriving at. Look at the movement of the human sperm. So human sperm moves with the help of the flagellum. Now we are looking at the skeletal muscle. They are of mesodermal origin, and as a single unit they will comprise the largest fraction of the human body, so largest percentage of the body mass. And if you add the entire connective tissue, that includes the bone as well, that is made up of embryonic mesoderm, an important question would be that which germ layer is responsible for the formation of maximum amount of tissue in the adult human body. The answer would be obviously the embryonic mesoderm. This is something very important. Then we are going through some of the very simple questions that I believe that you actually know. So we know that a muscle cell, so we are talking about skeletal muscle. You know the difference between skeletal muscle, the smooth muscle, and the cardiac muscle. I would be discussing this thing in chapter 7 as well, but I want you to recollect the differences between the skeletal muscle, the cardiac muscle, and the smooth muscle. That can be a simple and important question in your NEET entrance examination. Then specifically to the skeletal muscle, you know that the cell membrane of the skeletal muscle is called as a sarcolemma, the cytoplasm is called as sarcoplasm. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum present inside the skeletal muscle fiber. Incidentally, the muscle cell is called as a muscle fiber, and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which store calcium that are required for muscle contraction, they are called as sarcoplasmic reticulum. So this is the basic thing that we must know. Then your NCERT talks about the connective tissue coverings. So the NCERT talks about the connective tissue coverings, and let me look at this section. Individual muscle fiber will be surrounded by a very thin connective tissue which is called as the endomysium. So large number of muscle fibers. Now we know that muscle fibers are the individual cells. Each of them would be surrounded by an endomysium. So this is something that I believe that everybody knows. So I am not writing all the names here. This is just for your information, just for your recollection. And then you know that this bundle is actually called as a fascicle, and the fascicle is surrounded by a connective tissue which is actually called as the perimysium. And there would be some large number of, let us say, the fascicle that will comprise what is called as a skeletal muscle. And according to the NCERT, now this final covering would be the fascia. And please try to remember that there is a little bit of what you would say a gray area here, that how the fascia should be defined. There is a superficial fascia, there is a deep fascia, but I am sticking again, as I said, to the NCERT, where it says that rather than using the word epimysium, it is saying that it is actually the fascia that surrounds the entire skeletal muscle. So keep this in mind, but it will be good if you remember that this is actually epimysium, and fascia, the deep fascia part, actually gets involved in the formation of epimysium, as it also gets involved in the formation of aponeurosis as well as tendons. So this is an important question that you must remember about the skeletal muscle. Then it says that this muscle fiber, which is a syncytium, I hope you remember what is a syncytium. It has some rod-like structures, filamentous structures. They are called as myofibrils. These myofibrils are made up of myofilaments. So there is a muscle fiber. Inside the muscle fiber there are myofibrils. The myofibrils are made up of myofilaments. The myofilaments are of two types. One is called as the thick myofilament, the other is called as the thin myofilament. The thick myofilament is actually made up of myosin protein, and the thin myofilament is largely made up of what is called as the actin protein. So I am writing some terms. I am saying what is a muscle fiber, then I am saying what exactly is, please remember what is a myofibril. So even I do not listen to myself. I told you that I am not going to write anything, but this is just before the exam. So actually I am writing the various terms here. So now you know that what are myofilaments, and these myofilaments would be thick and they would be thin, and this would be largely made up of what is said as a myosin, and this would be basically comprised of what is called as actin. So this terminology should be absolutely clear in the mind of the student going for the NEET entrance exam. Then they will be asking you about the ultrastructure of the myosin. It has a tail, it has a short arm and a globular head. So again, this time I am not going to write it. So it has a tail which is made up of what is called as light meromyosin. It has a short arm and a globular head which is made up of the heavy meromyosin. These are the subunits or the components of the myosin that makes up the thick myofilament of the skeletal muscle fibers, and this thing would actually form ultimately what is called as the cross arm. And the myosin head has actually two sites, one to bind to the active sites on the actin filament, and second to bind to the ATP molecule that will be used for hydrolysis, for providing energy for muscle contraction. So two sites, and obviously you will be looking at the two heavy chains, something like this, and there would be two short arms and two globular heads as well. Now please remember that myosin head has an ATPase activity. So it can cleave or hydrolyze ATP, and for this it requires magnesium ion. So myosin head has ATPase activity, and this ATPase activity depends on magnesium ion. This is the next important question from your NCERT molecule. If we look at NCERT textbook, if you look at the actin protein, then what is it? So the monomeric actin is called as G-actin, and G-actin has an ADP molecule attached. This forms what are called as the active sites, and then it polymerizes and forms a twisted type of molecule. So it is not linear. If you look at NCERT, it will be twisted, something like this. And this polymeric actin is actually called as the F-actin. As I told you, these are the active sites, the ADP molecules, and because it is a twisted molecule, it is turned something like this. There will be a groove, and the active sites will be located within the groove, and we will try to cover this groove with another protein, and this protein would wrap around this particular groove that is present on the surface of the F-actin and is called as tropomyosin. But this alone will not be effective in masking the active sites effectively that are present on the actin myofilament. So for that to happen, wherever there is a cluster of the active site, you will see that there is another protein. There are three globular proteins which are components of this protein that I am talking about, and this protein is called as troponin, and this troponin is one which is called as troponin A or troponin I, or the second component is called as troponin T, and the third one, let us say this one, is called as troponin C. This troponin C binds to calcium during muscle contraction. The troponin A or troponin I will bind to actin, and troponin T will bind to tropomyosin. And if I am asked to choose one, I will say that troponin would be the first molecule. That would be my answer, that effectively covers or masks the active site that are present on the actin filament. Yes, obviously it is helped by tropomyosin as well. So this is the basic anatomy that you should know. And incidentally, please try to remember, though this is not present in NCERT but may be important in your NEET entrance exam, that smooth muscles do not have troponin. So instead they have another protein, one of which would be calmodulin, and actually the calcium binding protein in the smooth muscle may be actually calmodulin. So please try to remember this. So this is the actin filament, the possible questions that you can easily understand. Then moving on, you cannot study muscle physiology without knowing the structure exactly clearly about the functional unit, or the functional and structural unit of muscle contraction, which is actually called as the sarcomere. And in the sarcomere in skeletal muscles, the thin and the thick filaments, they are present alternately, and there is a partial overlap between them. So suppose I am going to make what are called as the thick myofilaments. So let me make the thick myofilaments. So let me make them thick. So these are the thick myofilaments. We know that they are made up of myosin, and then there would be the thin myofilaments. And the thin myofilaments, you will see that there is a partial overlap. Can you see that there is a partial overlap between myosin and actin at their ends? This is something very, very important to understand. Here again, you will have what is called as a partial. You can see the partial overlap in this region on either side, and then again alternatively, as I said, that this would be again having the thick myofilaments or the myosin myofilaments and something like this. So they are located, or they are constituting what is called as the myofibril, and you can see the alternate arrangement of the thick and the thin myofilaments. Now what is important to understand, the other features would be that these thick myofilaments are held together by a thin connective tissue. Now please try to recollect the name. I am not going to write it again. This is what is called as the M line. So the thick myofilaments are held in place by a thin connective tissue. It's a band-like connective tissue. This is what is called as the M line, and you can see that this one actually holds what are called as the thin myofilaments, as you can see, and these thin myofilaments are held by what are called as the Z line. and the area between two Z line, this particular part, this the part between the two Z line is actually what is called as the sarcomere. So this is the fundamental organization of the sarcomere. And if you look at this very closely, what you will see is that in the region of the partial overlap, especially you will see that the short arm and the globular head, if you remember, the short arm and the globular head, and this head which has an active site to bind to the active site that is present on the actin filament is actually going something like this. So this is something very, very important. As you can see that this is the orientation, and please remember that in the region of the overlap you are looking at some overhangs, and these overhangs are the short arm and the globular head of the myosin that are very near the actin filament. Now finally, please remember this, that in the center of the sarcomere, look at this area, this has primarily the thick myofilaments, but again please do not forget that in the region of overlap in a relaxed sarcomere you will see at least what are called as the thin myofilaments as well. And this part is anisotropic to the polarized light and therefore appears darker and therefore is called as the A band or the dark band. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. And each sarcomere have its own A band. And if you leave out the area of the overlap which also contains actin, so that means in the middle of the A band you see that there is exclusively only the thick myofilaments, and this part is actually called as the H zone, and in the middle of the H zone you can see that there is an M line. And similarly, if you look at this area, it contains only the thin myofilaments and is actually shared by the adjacent sarcomere. So some part of this region is actually lying in this sarcomere, some part would be lying in that sarcomere. This part is isotropic to polarized light and is hence called as the I band or what is called as the light band. Since you have already read the chapter, so let me give you a question right here. So what happens during muscle contraction is that the length of the sarcomere actually decreases. So the length of the sarcomere actually decreases. As you can easily understand, these actin filaments, they slide under the myosin, which is actually called as the sliding filament theory. So somehow these myosin head will bind to the active sites and will pull the actin filaments towards the M line. So from this end, this actin filament will be pulled in this direction and this one will be pulled in this direction. This will lead to the contraction of the muscle because there will be shortening in the length of the sarcomere. This is very easy to understand that H zone will be reduced in length. It may actually disappear at a maximal contraction, and the length of the I band is also going to be reduced. But the A band length will remain constant. You can easily understand it is not going anywhere. So this is an important question during muscle contraction. We will say that I band length reduces, then we say that the length of the sarcomere reduces, H zone reduces, but the length of the A band remains same. So probably this is the most important diagram that you need to remember about the skeletal muscle physiology. If you understand this, then you will be very easily understanding what is called as the muscle contraction. So the next thing that NCERT talks about is the mechanism of muscle contraction. So let me give you an overview here. What are the possible questions? So that means in the cerebrum, the muscular activity. So remember we are saying that the skeletal muscles are voluntary. So they are voluntary. So they are under your command, I would say. So this is what is called as the cerebrum. So when NCERT says that the activity is planned in the central nervous system, so we know that the cerebrum has an important role to play. And then obviously this information relates to the appropriate spinal cord level. So it comes to the spinal cord level. This is what NCERT means by the central nervous system. If you look at the mechanism of muscle contraction in the initial part, it is talking about central nervous system. So now we know that this thing originates in the cerebrum, descends to the appropriate spinal cord, and then you know that it leaves the spinal cord by the anterior motor neuron. So I hope you remember this thing. This is what is called as an anterior motor neuron. So we are looking at an effector part of the nervous system, and we are looking at a motor neuron. And an anterior motor neuron innervates more than one muscle fiber in a muscle. Now please listen this thing very carefully. A single motor neuron innervates more than one muscle fiber in a muscle, and a single motor neuron innervating all the muscle fibers in a muscle constitute what is called as a motor unit. So what happens is that this thing actually reaches through the motor unit at what is called as the neuromuscular junction. So we are saying that this anterior motor neuron actually, let me make a rough diagram. This is the cerebrum. So it is actually rough. So, but please bear with me. So something is planned here. It comes to the level of the spinal cord, and then the anterior motor neuron actually leaves the spinal cord, goes to the muscle, and we are saying that it will be innervating more than one muscle fiber, which constitute what is called as a motor unit, and then the impulse actually reaches this junction. This junction will be called as the myoneural junction or the neuromuscular junction, where there would be a motor end plate here and the terminal nerve endings of the motor neuron, and this thing would be a type of it will be actually a neuromuscular junction. So now we know that it reaches the neuromuscular junction, and one of the most important question is that acetylcholine will be released here, and when acetylcholine is released by this motor neuron, it binds to the receptor that are present on the sarcolemma, opens the sodium channel, and leads to depolarization of the sarcolemma and leads to generation of the action potential. So what happens is that this will ultimately lead to generation of action potentials in sarcolemma, and this thing will somehow activate what are called as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So remember, I told you that this sarcoplasmic reticulum is actually a type of smooth endoplasmic reticulum and stores the calcium ions, and these calcium ions are very important in muscle contraction. And what happens is that once they are activated, they release calcium into the sarcoplasm, and these calcium, they diffuse towards what are called as troponin, if you remember, and this calcium binds to, NCERT says, a subunit of troponin, which is actually troponin C, and this undergoes a conformational change, and when troponin molecule itself undergoes a conformational change, so it pulls tropomyosin deeper into the groove, and that exposes the active site that are present on the actin myofilaments to the globular head of the myosin. So this is how the unmasking thing happens. So we are saying this will undergoes conformational change, it pulls, I am saying tropomyosin. So let us write tropomyosin, and what happens is that the active sites are unmasked. So this is what happens during a muscle contraction, a contraction of the skeletal muscle, which is voluntary. This is how excitation contraction coupling takes place, which means how this neural stimulation leads to a physical process which is called as the contraction of the muscle. This thing is called as excitation contraction coupling, and you can easily understand what are the various steps here. And now please remember that the active sites have been unmasked. Myosin head have an affinity for the active sites present on the actin myofilament, but under the resting condition, the tropomyosin and troponin actually mask them, so it is not able to bind. Something else is required for the myosin head to bind to the active site, but an important thing would be that there should be the unmasking of the active site, and now we know that how this unmasking happens. Now, the actual muscle contraction has been explained beautifully by what is called as the sliding filament theory. Now, this sliding filament theory is actually very, very simple. So, let us go to this diagram. So, let me try to tell you what exactly is sliding filament theory with the help of this diagram, and I would like to focus your attention for 10 to 15 seconds on this diagram, and then we will actually make this diagram small, keep it here for our future references, and we'll try to understand what is called as the sliding filament theory. So again, try to recollect this diagram. I am taking a sip of water and you have 10 seconds for that. So now I think you have this opportunity to recollect everything. Please keep in mind the structure of a sarcomere, and let us keep this sarcomere of ours here. If required, we will refer back to it. Now, What happens is, just try to understand something very, very clearly here. There is no haste at all. No haste at all. What I am saying is that, let us say this is the actin myofilament. So let us say this is the actin myofilament. It has the active site that is present on its surface, and we know that that active site would be an ADP molecule, and that would be present in the monomeric subunit, which is actually called as the G-actin. And now let us say that this is the myosin filament, and you can see that this conformation of myosin filament, I would call it as a relaxed state. So this actually is a relaxed state. We will come back to this step once I have done all the steps, and then I will understand exactly what happens here. Now, incidentally, what has happened is that this place, if you remember, has a site for binding to the ATP molecule. So somewhere here, the ATP molecule actually binds. Now, please remember that binding of the ATP molecule will lead to the breaking of the cross bridges, because you have actually understood and you have read this chapter once. So I am using this liberty to tell you in advance that try to remember that this ATP molecule is present here, and it has, let us assume, it has detached from the cross bridges. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. Now, after this, what happens is that this ATP is hydrolyzed. So let us take the appropriate shape of the pen, and let us say the ATP molecule is hydrolyzed, it is cleaved, and we know that this hydrolysis can be achieved by the myosin head. We know it has an ATPase activity, and we know that it is dependent on the magnesium ion, and we know that the end products of ATP hydrolysis would be ADP and inorganic phosphate, and they are still present here. So please try to understand, ATP molecule is hydrolyzed, but the product, the ADP and the inorganic phosphate, are still present at this site. So ATP has hydrolyzed. What happens is that it actually energizes the ATP molecule and brings it up to what is called as a cock-up position. So which means that something like this happens. So let me take the appropriate pen again, and let us say that something like this happened. Can you imagine? So it has actually become a cock up type of position. Just try to understand that if you have used a gun, a toy gun, where you actually pull it, and then actually when you pull it, there is a spring, and it actually stores energy in it. And when you pull the trigger, it actually pushes the bullet forward. So this is something what is happening, that you are analogous to that. You are pulling the barrel back, and you are actually making up it a cock-up position where it is ready to shoot. Now this is what happens. Now then what happens is that this actually binds to the active site which is present on the actin myofilament. So I hope this thing is absolutely clear. So ATP is hydrolyzed, this thing gets into a cocked up position, it becomes activated, and it binds to the active sites that have already been unmasked because of the conformational change of the troponin molecule. This is very, very important to understand. And because they have been provided the energy, now that trigger will be pulled. That energy that was stored in the spring because of the pulling the barrel back, you can easily understand now that energy can be released. And what happens is that this globular head tilts forward, and there is a movement at this hinge as well, and this thing goes back to this type of configuration, if you can understand. And this will actually pull actin towards what is called as the M line. I think this thing now should be easily understood. Thing should be now easily understood. Look at this. So look at the conformations here. So this myosin head binds to the active filament here, and this myosin head binds it here. It moves like this, This one actually, can you see the two orientations in the different direction? It will move like this. Similarly, this one will be moving towards the M line. This will be moving towards the M line. And because now they are attached to the active sites on the actin filament, they will pull the actin filament towards the M line, and actin filaments actually slide under the myosin. Please try to understand, myosin are going nowhere. We know that the length of the A band remains constant during muscle contraction. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. So once it has pulled, so let us say something like this happens, and we are using this color. So it has pulled the actin filament and it has come forward. I hope this thing is now absolutely clear. This thing is called as the formation of the cross bridge. The arm and the globular head, this part of the myosin binds to the active site, and this is called as the formation of the cross bridge. And now it releases ADP and inorganic phosphate. So simultaneously it is pulled, the actin filament is pulled towards the myosin end, and the ADP and the inorganic phosphate is actually released from that particular site, and it undergoes to its relaxed conformation. It undergoes to the relaxed conformation. Now you can understand there are no ADP and inorganic phosphate here. They have been removed. Now, which means this site is now free. This is now having nothing attached to it. And then what happens? Now you can understand why I told you that we will come back to this step again. ATP molecule binds and this cross bridge is broken. This cross bridge is broken, then this cycle actually repeats itself. So this cycle actually repeats itself, and what happens is that again an ATP molecule will be hydrolyzed. It becomes cock up, forms the cross bridge, with the help of the energy pulls the actin filaments towards the M line, releases ADP and inorganic phosphate, goes to the relaxed state, and then again a ATP molecule binds and the cross bridge is broken, and this cycle is actually repeated again and again, and this will continue till there is a maximum contraction. Say for example, the actin filaments reach the myosin, and the length of, as you can easily understand, that the length of the sarcomere is going to be reduced, the length of the H zone is going to be reduced, the I band will be reduced in the length, but the A band will maintain its length. So this is how muscle contraction actually is brought about. I hope this is what is called as a Rachet hypothesis. So a sliding filament theory, and this is the formation and the breaking of the cross bridges, which is called as a single Rachet, and this actually repeats multiple times as is the requirement of the contraction in the length of the muscle is concerned. Now, during relaxation, there has to be the masking of the active sites on actin filaments again, and therefore somehow the calcium should be removed from the troponin C molecule. Probably it would be done, as you can easily understand logically, it should be done by active transport, and they are actively pumped back into the cisternae of the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, which is called as the sarcoplasmic reticulum. And now what happens is that because of the deconformation, the tropomyosin and the troponin actually comes back again into the groove, properly positioned, covering or masking the active site, and the actin filament, the myosin head will now not be able to bind to the active site, and these filaments, as you can understand, if you pull a rubber band, leave it will go back to its original position and they will slide back, and this is how the muscle is actually really relaxed. And this is a very, very simple thing which is actually called as the sliding filament theory. Now you read, if you have any problem, now you read the page of the NCERT that I am talking about. After this discussion, you will understand each and every line of your NCERT. Now finally, there is an important question left, and that important question from this chapter from your NCERT, again and again I am telling you that I am limiting myself almost exclusively to the NCERT. Now, this is something very interesting. If you look at the locomotion, so which involves a change in position. So this locomotion can be for two basic reasons. One reason or group of reasons will include that an organism has to go for food, has to go for mating, or there has been some migration, etc., etc. These type of movements will be clubbed on one hand, and the second would be the escape from predation. So escape from predation, you can easily understand that this type of movement has to be a spurt. It has to be a sudden, fast type of movement, and this can be slow and sustained. This can be slow and sustained. So what we will see is that during evolution, there are two types of muscle fibers that actually have evolved. One would be adapted to slow sustained activity. The other would be a sudden outburst of activity for a very short period of time, but should be very, very strong, or the strength should be higher. So this is what is called as a type 1 muscle fiber. This is what is called as type 2 muscle fiber. These are called as the red muscle fiber. These are called as the white muscle fiber. None of the muscle fiber is actually white in color, which means they are low. They are less red in color because muscle physiology is unique, and it is where the partial pressure of oxygen actually can go low, and therefore muscle must store its own oxygen. And we know that there is a molecule, a respiratory pigment, which has only a single polypeptide chain and has a dissociation curve in the form of a rectangular hyperbola, and which is actually called as myoglobin, that stores oxygen in the skeletal muscle as well, in spite of the fact that the muscle can actually take a large amount of oxygen by shifting the curve towards the right from hemoglobin as well. So there is a huge adaptation where muscles which require a lot of energy will require therefore a lot of oxygen. There must be some adaptation how to provide them. So you can get more oxygen from the normal 5 ml per 100 ml of blood up to 15 ml during strenuous exercise from hemoglobin. And then even if there is a requirement, the muscle itself stores what is called as myoglobin, and this stores what is called as oxygen in the pigment molecule, which is called as myoglobin, has its own glycogen supply as well. And in the red muscle fibers, the content of the myoglobin is higher, and in the white muscle fibers or the type 2 muscle fibers, it is actually lower. Now the second thing is that because this would be basically dependent on the aerobic respiration or the aerobic metabolism, so you will see that in these muscle fibers, the capillaries as well as the number of the mitochondria is relatively higher. And here you will see that the capillaries and the number of the mitochondria are comparatively lower. So this is the comparison between type 1 and type 2 muscle fiber. And what exactly is more in white muscle fiber would be the sarcoplasmic reticulum. So we know the more motor units are involved, there can be more precise control as well as more strength of the muscle contraction as well. So it will require calcium, and this calcium is stored in sarcoplasmic reticulum that is actually higher in the white muscle fiber. So then the end of the chapter, you can see that there is a type 1 muscle fiber, type 2 muscle fiber, and in the very end, please try to remember muscles can directly use ATP and only ATP as the source of energy. So muscle has a high energy phosphate compound other than ATP stored in it, which is called as creatine phosphate. But if required, creatine phosphate cannot be used directly by the muscle. Its high energy phosphate would be transferred to the ADP molecule, and the ATP will be regenerated, and then it is going to use what is called as creatine phosphate. Please remember the difference between creatine and creatinine. Creatine is a normal protein and creatinine is a metabolic waste product of this protein. So there is a difference between the two. And finally, the third thing would be, first it will use ATP, then it can use creatine phosphate indirectly, and then finally it will have to make ATP by oxidative phosphorylation, and that is why it has a large number of mitochondria, but it may take some time, and during that time there may be anaerobic respiration or lactate fermentation. And if the muscle continues working, and there is a chance that these anaerobic conditions will lead to the accumulation of lactic acid, and the accumulation of lactic acid actually causes pain. There would be cramps, and you will have to stop the muscle activity. Once you stop the muscle activity, the blood supply actually circulation removes the lactate from the site, and the pain is actually gone. And this is how muscle physiology is highly adapted to have a large amount of oxygen and produce large amount of ATP and stores these energy rich compounds as well.